Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out to be here today. My name is Kandeice Gibson. I'm the District Director of Institutional Planning and Effectiveness. Joining me here today is Ms. Louise Winter, our coordinator, and many of you work with her throughout the IE cycle, so she'll be here to assist with this session today. And also, we have in the room our Associate Vice President, Renee Law, for our area. And I know Renee has to go to another meeting, so I wanted to give her the opportunity to just share her perspective on what we're about to talk about today before she goes. So Renee.
Thank you, Kandeice. Good afternoon, everyone. And I just wanted to pop in and say, thank you to all of you who are here going through this activity with Kandeice. This has been a long-awaited approach, I think. Kandeice has been talking about this for a while and really excited to be able to walk through the program mapping and curriculum mapping with all of you. And we hope that this will simplify your lives at the end of it. It might be a heavy lift in the beginning, but we're hoping that this will simplify your lives in the end, and really just appreciate that all of you have taken time out to make it here, and hope that this is helpful and that we are open to input and feedback as always, as Kandeice always asks for your input, to modify and adjust things so that we are in fact making life a little bit easier for everyone in terms of looking at your curriculum and determining where you are assessing learning outcomes and when they're being assessed, and really kind of getting into that cycle of assessment. So just wanted to take a moment to say thank you everyone for taking the time, and thank you to Kandeice publicly for continuing to push for this to happen, and Louise for being right by her side. So thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, AVP Law. And with that, I am going to share again, because I had to stop share so you all see Renee's face and while she's speaking. So let me share one more time. So, okay, so here we go. So you all should be seeing my slides again. Can someone confirm?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So with that, for today, we are going to be talking about, first and foremost, curriculum effectiveness, because I think that's an important component of understanding why we're doing the mapping, what it is that we're trying to accomplish. There's the quote from Stephen Covey that talks about begin with the end in mind. So if we have a sense of where we want to go with this work, that gives us some understanding of how to approach the process. What is the product that we want at the end. We also are going to talk about learning outcome alignment. We'll talk about specifically what is a curriculum map. We'll talk about the principles of curriculum mapping and the process. We'll look at ways in which we'll evaluate a completed curriculum map. And then I'll be showing you our template that is built in-house. This was a collaborative experience. I picked on a couple who I'll call curriculum mapping champions who engaged with me as somewhat of design partners, and I'll name them now. I have on the line with us Dr. Nora Powell, our Dean of Health Sciences, who will be a guest speaker today to share some of her insights around curriculum mapping. Also, Professor Felix Lorenzo, he'll be joining us shortly. He is our program manager and faculty in the building construction program. And then also Professor Dina Durand, who could not be here today, but also gave wonderful feedback in terms of the curriculum mapping process and how to best approach it from her perspective, also played a key role. So I want to thank each of these individuals and for their part in this process in helping us to get to this point. I will say that this is a work in progress. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today, and even the examples that we're sharing, they're not complete. They're not necessarily perfection, right? Because this is, we're starting the work of looking at our curriculum from this perspective. And so that's what I hope to convey to you all. And of course, our guest speakers will be sharing, again, their insights. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. So before I really get into what curriculum mapping is and into the detail, Louise, if you don't mind, can you go ahead and pull up the first poll? I just want to get a sense of what you all already, or the level, I suppose, that you feel of knowledge you already feel you have about curriculum mapping, so we know what's just how that looks in this particular room today. So whenever you can, Louise, go ahead and launch that poll. Louise, can you close this particular poll? Let's start again. We want to do poll number 1.
Okay.
I'm sorry, everyone. We'll relaunch the poll. It should say poll number 1. There we go.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're almost there. There's a couple more people to put in their poll responses. I think we've pretty much got everyone. Okay, very good. So let me share the results with you. Actually, yeah, share results. So here we go. You can see it on your screen. We have just about 43% saying very familiar, another 30 somewhat familiar. So very few of you are unfamiliar with curriculum mapping. So this is fantastic. So a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you today will only reinforce what you already know and do, and more or less for us to have that shared knowledge and understanding about how we approach the curriculum mapping process and how we might use it going forward for various reasons.
We couldn't see that as statistics, Kandeice. Just so
You
you
could
know.
not?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a little new to polls, so.
I
So.
mean, you told
yeah.
us, so it's okay. I just want you to know that.
Okay. I'll figure out how to make sure that that's shared on the screen. So with that, there we go. So according to Linda Susky, who is an assessment guru, I would call her. She is a higher education assessment consultant, has written books on assessment, and she just actually released her 3rd edition. And a lot of her blog has been focused on putting out some thoughts out there to her audience about what are things that constitute an effective curriculum. And it's actually featured in her book as well. So just want to go over some of what she indicates as an effective curriculum. So first of all, it treats learning as a promise. So it's focused on the core things that students must know that they will definitely walk away with, is responsive to the needs of students, employers, and the society. So there's this focus on, okay, what does the student need to know versus what faculty want to teach per se, and of course making sure that there's generally an agreement between what faculty want to teach and as well as what students need to learn to have their post-secondary success and to meet the needs of the workforce. And then of course, an effective curriculum gives students ample diverse opportunities to achieve the core learning outcomes as they're progressing through the program, and is consistent across the different modalities. That of course, that's an important thing when you think about it. Shouldn't matter where the student learns it or who they learn it with. There should be a consistency in what they learn. And another attribute or trait is that it is greater than the sum of its parts. So a program is not just, you know, a bunch of courses. There is a sense of coherence and synthesis across what students are learning as they navigate the curriculum. Linda suggests that, of course, a program should conclude with an integrative, synthesizing capstone experience. So I know that not every program here at the college, for example, has a capstone, but it's certainly something to consider as you think about students gaining those culminating skills by the time they're graduating or ready to graduate. And then it's focused and simple. So that would help students to navigate the program relatively easily and also understand what it is that how what they're learning ties together by the end. And then of course it has an appropriate progressive rigor. So again, when you think about, okay, a student comes into the program, they're getting foundations, and as they go along, they're building on that knowledge in some way that leads them to mastery. And then uses research-informed strategies to help students learn. So what we're talking about here is integrating various high-impact practices into the program. So a lot of you do contextualized courses, or you have learning communities, you have service learning, different types of experiences that help students to learn. These are important aspects of an effective curriculum. And so here on the side, you have a quote from Linda Susky again, just explaining that a true program is both coherent and rigorous. So with that, I have the second poll. So Louise, go ahead and see if you can launch that effectiveness poll again. That should, has it popped up for you all?
It's saying shared results, so I think it's not going to launch again.
Oh, okay, that's a snag. Well, let's say this then. For those of you that are in the room, does anyone want to share your thoughts on curriculum, on some of these points, or which say you agree with these particular points from Linda Susky?
Hi guys, it's Annie Myers. How are you?
Hi, doing well, Annie.
So, you know, the last one, definitely the research-informed strategies, right? Because we need the input of our local employers who are going to hire our students, right? So I think that's critical that, you know, in our area, the program managers, they host the advisory board meetings, they go out and meet with the employers, because you know, we've got to make sure that, and healthcare is the same way, we've got to make sure that we're meeting the needs and the latest trends are what the employers are expecting. So, you know, I think that is huge as far as curriculum effectiveness, along with how we deliver it.
Perfect. I see Joy's hand is raised. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. I really focused on giving students ample, diverse opportunities to achieve core learning outcomes. One of the things that I've really been paying attention to since I've been developing some of the online courses over the last few years is really looking at all those different learning styles. And I think that not everybody's going to be successful with the same kind of assessment. So I really think that this is important to think about the diversity in your classroom and the diversity allowing students to be more successful depending on their learning style.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for those comments. So yes, as we think about, again, what makes a curriculum effective, that's when it gets into now, how do we make sure that our curriculum is effective? And that's where curriculum mapping comes in, because it's a way of really viewing the curriculum at a very high level, the big picture level, to be able to gain these insights. Because I think that in practice, we know that we have designed pretty good curriculum. I mean, we have excellent program maps here, and we've really thought through our curriculum, and we naturally have a focus on that here and are routinely reviewing it. So the idea of a curriculum map is to be able to make sure that we're able to detect if there are any issues in a structured, easy to use format. So with that said, another important thing that I think we have to consider is our outcome alignment. So the quote here from Jankowski and others of NILOA, our National Institute of Learning Outcomes Assessment, is that while 70% of participants in this case report that their institutions are currently involved in curriculum mapping of some kind, only 50% indicate that all have learning outcomes and that those outcomes are aligned throughout the institution. So an important component of making sure that we are doing or we have an effective curriculum is that concept of alignment. So if you look at my pyramid here, you'll see that program level student learning outcomes are nice and big on my middle of my pyramid here, because that's at the level where we're going to be doing our curriculum mapping. And of course, we can do curriculum mapping at every level, right? The course level, the program level, and so on, and for different reasons. So for the purposes of today's conversation, we're talking about kind of your terminal degrees, or AS, or AAS, or BAS, meaning they're very well-defined programs that students have a coherent sequence of courses. And although we can do curriculum mapping to other types of programs, or even to non-academic areas, such as some of our student and support services areas, in terms of learning that students are learning, co-curricular experiences and different things like that. For today's conversation, we're really going to focus on a traditional sense of a program. And so again, going back to our pyramid, we know that if doing curriculum mapping at a program level is built on understanding your course outcomes, especially in particular, because you want to be able to understand, okay, well, what are the learning outcomes in the courses, and what are the different instructional strategies and assessments that are being used, because we use those course outcomes to identify if program learning is taking place. So it's really important to understand that curriculum mapping is also a tool for ensuring that we have this alignment in our programs across the institution. So what is a curriculum map? First and foremost, it's a dashboard. So it's a single screen visualization like you see here. It's a chart, it's a matrix. It's something that you can do using very fancy tools, or easily in an Excel spreadsheet. And actually the tool that I'll be offering to you all, my revised curriculum map, is an Excel spreadsheet. But there are certainly different ways to approach this. But for just in terms of understanding what the map is, it's just for us to be able to readily see what are the program learning outcomes, what is the relationship between the courses and the program learning outcomes, how is learning integrated, and how does it progress, and then of course ensuring your alignment of various standards, and in this case, competencies, so our institutional outcomes that all students need to gain by the time they have graduated from our various programs. And of course, you'll notice here that we indicate that progression of learning with codes. So these codes, IRM, introduced, reinforced, and mastered. And we want to be able to see, again, that students are getting ample opportunities to be able to learn these various program outcomes as they're navigating the program. So that's one of the first things about a curriculum map, is that it's a one-page document for the most part. It might be very tiny to read, depending on what you're viewing it on, and we'll see with the examples why I say that. But at the same time, it should be that you don't have to look in many different places to be able to understand what is your program made up of, and how does learning and assessment happen in your program. Secondly, it's a communication tool. So it's going to help facilitate conversation about how your curriculum ensures student learning and preparation for success after they leave us. So it's an opportunity to identify gaps in diverse and progressive learning opportunities. So again, we want to be able to look at that map and readily discern, are students getting enough opportunities to learn a particular concept. And then of course, it's going to help you to address any implications as you're making curricular changes. So in other words, you build your curriculum map and you might be considering changing or adding courses. And then when you think about, well, what are the standards that we need to meet from external bodies, as well as the outcomes we know our students need, how does any changes in the way we sequence our courses or add or modify courses affect our ability to meet ultimately our goal of having an effective curriculum that prepares students well. And then of course, to develop this shared knowledge and understanding of student learning, all right? The curriculum map, Jankowski from NILOA, she says it's it's a tool that begins with just addressing where we think students are learning, or how we think students are learning. So the process of doing the map and doing this collaboratively, especially, helps us to understand, do we all have different perspectives about what our outcomes mean, how we think learning is happening, where we think it's really happening. So this is, again, it's going to serve as a tool for having the conversation and then refining and continuing to evolve that conversation as we go along. Then finally, it is a planning tool. So this becomes, when it's completed, a blueprint for your program learning assessment, especially for, as you all know, with the annual cycle, you are routinely deciding on outcomes to assess. So with doing a curriculum map, you'll be able to quickly understand, well, where are the outcomes being mastered, because those are the courses that you want to focus on for assessment. And then you'll be able to readily identify as well what outcomes have been assessed and perhaps what have not been assessed. What have we neglected because we tended to focus on certain things that were more important at the time. And then of course it can be used to develop a rotational cycle for your assessment. So as Renee mentioned before she left, is that once you do this front end work of just laying it all out on paper, after that, it becomes maintenance. And then of course, it helps to just inform you, okay, we already assessed these two like for 5 years. So now we're gonna move on to our next two, and you set a schedule in motion for how you're going to make sure that you're routinely assessing everything that's happening in the program. And then of course, it provides an opportunity to build coherence and ensure intentional planning for student learning. So again, that conversation that you'll have with the rest of your colleagues, your faculty, your staff, et cetera, will continue to enhance that conversation about how do we continue to make this curriculum more effective. And through the assessment process, depending on how students are doing in courses you expect mastery, one of the things I've seen through working with each of you is that you realize that a lot of times there is something that needs to be addressed earlier in the curriculum, perhaps at the course level, but even so, perhaps with sequencing and different things like that. So curriculum mapping is serving all these different purposes of helping us to plan, helping us to communicate and be on the same page with our colleagues, helping us to be able to readily understand what is happening in our program and to ensure the various alignments that are needed. And again, it's not just for communicating internally, it is a good tool for communicating externally as well to accrediting bodies and so on. So with that, just to quickly run through the process. So I mentioned to you all that I have been working with several of my colleagues here, Dr. Nora Powell, Professor Dina Durand, and also Professor Felix Lorenzo across these the various pathways to get their insight and input as we were going through the process of refining our curriculum map. And I'll just say, if I haven't said it before, a lot of the work that I'm presenting to you here today is based on the work of Linda Susky and Nailoa. So you'll see that a lot of the way we've approached the design, it's really good industry standard, if you may, with assessment professionals. So and then of course, taking into consideration our unique perspectives and needs here at the college, because we have different programs and different needs. So by talking to each of these individuals, I found what worked and what didn't work. And Dr. Powell will share her insights a little bit later on about her experience working through this process and what she needed to accomplish through using curriculum mapping. But the idea is that one of the things I learned, especially from Professor Durand, is to start with the state standards. So by listing the state standards at a high level, of course, you know, the state standards, the frameworks, they go into pretty granular detail. And she admitted it would be nice to do it at the very granular level, but it's very involved to do it that way, at least on the front end. So we're going to start at the high level standards. And after that, we're going to list our courses, and we can sequence the courses according to the program map, or we can do it, or we can group our courses according to certain categories. And I'll show you what I mean by that when we look at some examples. And then we want to map the courses to the state standards. Initially, when I approached this, I did it the reverse. I thought we should start with determining what the program learning outcomes are, and then try to do a backwards mapping that way. But it turns out it makes more sense to map to those high level standards, especially having worked with my colleagues to kind of refine that process. So, and again, I'm telling you the process that we most recently went through. I think that as more of you continue to begin this process or utilize our process or translate what you already have to our process, you will identify other opportunities for improvement, which we welcome. You know, we want that input, and we want to make it easier as we go along. Then after we map the courses to the standards, we're going to group the standards to establish those culminating PSLOs. And through my work with Dean Powell and Professor Durand, we looked at the past IE PSLOs, because a lot, you know, of course, you all have been doing excellent assessment already. We're not reinventing the wheel. So we looked at all of them to be able to see where were we already defining really well culminating PSLOs, and how did those align to the state standards. So we look at trying to see where this already existed. And so, and if we weren't addressing something already, that's okay. At least we were able to just say, okay, we were already assessing this, we've already kind of defined it, and so on. And so through that process, we were able to really organize our curriculum maps in a way that made sense. Because, and then in Dean Powell's case, she has accrediting standards that she also needed to align to. So we were able to incorporate that. So again, we're coming away with one easy to read dashboard of making sure that we would be able to convey to our colleagues and to external bodies that we know how learning happens across the program. And from there, we're able to create a summary map that shows additional information around assessment. Of course, we know that doing this kind of high level map that's just the start. Like, we need to make sure that as we look at what we learn from doing the map at this initial level, that we review our course level outcomes and the assessments and the instruments and methods that are being used in those courses to ensure alignment. So this is just a quick snapshot of the process that we went through. So now let's talk about the principles. So this is from Linda Susky. So when we're talking about a program assessment or curriculum map, electives are not factored in. And in many cases, the gen ed courses aren't as well, because we want to focus on where students are gaining their content level knowledge out of the program. However, we are aligning our outcomes, our program level outcomes, to our general education competencies and workplace competencies. But I know that, again, every program is going to be a little unique, and in many instances, it may be appropriate to incorporate general education courses, especially if that's where some of the outcomes are being assessed for the program, depending on the nature. And so when it comes to those different nuances, I think having a one-on-one meeting to talk about it is more beneficial. Then when you, in terms of curriculum mapping, where there's a group of courses, Linda Susky calls it pick from a list courses, we look for the shared learning outcome across those courses, so that we're not necessarily writing these distinct outcomes for every single course that's on that particular list. In that sense, we might as well treat them as electives, because not all of the students are going to necessarily be taking the same set of courses. And then in terms of mapping the courses, we only want to map the courses if that specific learning outcome is a significant part of the course. So if they just touch on it here or there, we wouldn't want to say that it's necessarily mapped. We would want to ensure that the assessments that are being done in that course really reflect a significant enough coverage of that particular learning outcome. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, we use codes to indicate the level of learning that is achieved. I want to pause right here really quick to see if you all have any questions about anything that I've covered so far?
There are some questions, Candice, in the chat.
Okay, trying to see. Okay, so Dr. K, let me go ahead and pull your question up, is asking, how does this fit with SAC's request to assess all our AA programs? Well, this is a good question, and I know our District Director of Outcomes and Assessment, Cornelius Brownlee, is on the line. What I will say is that he is in the process of leading the effort to define our AA in meeting SAC's definition, if you may. So I think until we have to reserve this until we get to the point where some determination is made about how our AA are defined based on the SAC's definition. And from there, we would be able to apply this curriculum mapping process to our AA in terms of what it will look like at that point. I think that's the only question I saw. Louise, did you see anything different? I think that's the only one. But if not, you can open your mic and ask your question now as well. Okay, I think that was it. So in terms of evaluating a curriculum map, and you'll have an opportunity to do that, so bear some of these things in mind. When you're looking at a completed curriculum map, which I'm about to show you, I wanted to go over this before you looked at them, is across the program courses are all the PSLOs or standards addressed in a logical order. One of the things I'll note is that the way we do our curriculum map is going to be very customizable to your taste and preferences, in a sense, in terms of how you want to group your courses. But as you think about not so much the layout of the curriculum map, but more or less the sequence of when students are typically taking their courses, are they building up in their learning? So that's something you'll want to review as you complete a curriculum map. Then in terms of looking at your key courses, and I would say we might define these a little bit differently, but let's say core courses are addressing at least one of your outcomes. That's something you want to be able to tell. Do multiple courses address the same outcomes at the same levels? Is something else that you might want to look at. Do some of the outcomes get more coverage than others? I think that this is probably something that we'll all see as we look at some of our programs sometimes, is that some things might be deemed a little bit more important than others. So you'll see them checked off way more than other things, and some things might not get as much coverage. So that's important to review. And then in terms of the progress of learning or the opportunities to learn, are all outcomes first introduced and reinforced, or more or less are students expected to just master it by the end of the program, and we haven't really ensured that they're being introduced early enough and reinforced throughout. And then are students expected to show high levels of learning too early? So as soon as they come in, they need to, in one class, they're expected to be introduced, reinforced, and mastered in a particular learning outcome without having an opportunity to really progressively build that knowledge. And then in terms of the assessment, do students get practice on all the outcomes before they're assessed? So for example, if you have a capstone course, are they covering things in the capstone? Say they have a culminating final project, did they get enough practice for all the components that are required for that capstone project throughout the curriculum? How do assignments elicit demonstrations of particular learning outcomes? How are we assessing it and where? So after you've done this particular mapping, again, like I said, and another next step is to really think about how learning is actually happening at the course and the class level to make sure that those assessments that are identified are effective for demonstrating that particular outcome. And then finally, how do faculty or courses each contribute to the collective enterprise of helping students to demonstrate the outcomes? Here's another statement from Nailoa. Remember that mapping is as much about the process of seeing relationships as it is about completing the spreadsheet or any kind of product. And again, like I said, we have a tool here that we are going to offer to you to use for this process, because the objective is to try to get every program to have one of these on record again, so that you have completed this evaluation of your program, and then of course that you're using it to guide your planning and assessments going forward. So here is a work in progress example from business analytics. Now these are shared with you, you know, based on my work with the program managers and deans and so on that I've worked with. And it's not intended here for us to critique it. It's really just to say this was a starting point. And Professor Duran was kind enough to participate in this process and willingly share some of what we were able to work on. This is not something that has been finalized or vetted or anything like that yet. It's just showing the application of the curriculum to our template. So one of the things I want to point out is that on the template, notice I talked about grouping the courses. Linda Susky actually is a proponent of this and suggests that we would group the courses into categories where it makes sense that we would see that progressive building along. So if you notice, we started with foundations, then cornerstone courses, core courses, and finally a capstone. Notice that the map also includes general education and electives courses that are defined on the program map, because we want to ensure that the map reflects everything the students are doing. And we'll be able to see, if you look at in the yellow area here, it says T3, T5, T8. Those are referring to the program map terms that we have suggested when students take this. And this is important because then we'll have a sense of understanding what terms are they taking these courses in. Is there a logical sequence to the map based on how we want to ensure that students are building up in their learning? Another thing that we'll notice here is that we've mapped to the standards, right? But we also have grouped the standards, as I mentioned, according to the similar concepts of the standards. And then we have our PSLO that's defined to capture that standard as a whole. So you can see here in this particular case, the querying data standard, that you will see what the competencies that are being addressed and where the level of learning that's happening across the various courses for this particular standard. So that's where that grouping comes into place in terms of how we organize the layout of the map once we have mapped to the standards. Because what we want to do with program level student learning outcomes is we don't want to have too many. We want to have a short list of the key things that students need to walk away with, that we'll be able to understand that they're gaining these culminating. Again, it's about being able to say students have mastered the curriculum in a synthesized way, because again, the standards, even at a high level, go into pretty granular detail. So I want to show you, after we've done this process, we're able to create an even more summarized version of that map, where now we're adding in how assessment happened in that program. Notice that in order to do this, we reduced the standards down to just their numeric values. And from there, we added IE cycle assessed and the method. So again, this is where planning comes in, because now you'll see that, okay, there are some boxes that are empty, that there was no assessment done. So that's how this helps you now to not come to the drawing board every year when it's a time for IE cycle to say, okay, I just want to reassess this because I think it's important. Now you'll be using it based off of information in a simplified form to say, okay, I see where we need to assess, make sure that we're covering and doing assessment of all of the program. And I'll tell you this, when Sachs was here for our 5th year interim review, this was something they raised in terms of requesting to see how we're ensuring that there is coverage of the assessments that are going on in the program. And I know on a year-to-year basis, it's very specific to that cycle, and it can get lost in a sense of, okay, I should have just a big picture sense of what is everything that we need to assess, and how are we making sure that we're on some type of logical or well-planned process or cycle of assessing everything that's in the program. So I want to also show you that if you noticed on the previous version of this map, so there's two tabs in the curriculum mapping tab. There's what I call the detail, and this is the summary, and they serve different purposes, of course. This one is strictly for just communicating the big picture about where assessment is happening. And so what you'll notice here is that on the previous map, on the previous version of this map, when it was in detail, there were two rows that constituted the querying data because it's mapped to the state standard level. Here on this version, those are collapsed. So now you see those rows combined as one. And then you're also able to see, based on the IE assessment history, where was this assessment completed? So we can see on this particular map that just in querying data, it was assessed in 2 courses over the past 3 cycles. One where it was at mastery level and another where it was at reinforced level. And of course, again, this is just a way for helping us to understand how are we doing assessment, where are we doing it, and are we doing it in the way that best helps us to know that our curriculum is effective and that we have that coverage of the assessment. I want to show you a couple of examples before I open up for questions again. So let's take a look at Dr. Powell's. So this is our health information technology program. Another thing you'll notice here is that there are different groupings of the courses because of the nature of the program. And that's why I say this is pretty customizable. It's going to be based on how you deliver your program and how you think it's best represented to understand, again, that sequence and progression of learning. Another aspect of this is that she has an accrediting body for this particular program. So of course we needed to incorporate it. Keep in mind that we still are mapping to the state standard level, and then we're applying the domains from in this case of the accrediting body. And what you'll notice here is that domains 1, 2, and 3 overlap what we represent here as our PSLOs, and they overlap standards. And so I think there's going to be unique things that happen across the different programs as you're looking at this, and it will remain a work in progress to really refine these and understand how we outline how learning happens in the curriculum. So again, on the summarized version, we see that we've just limited these 2 columns to the numbers that represent all of that language, and then we add in where learning is happening. And again, you'll be able to see if something is not being addressed. And what we covered here was just the last 3 cycles. So it's, in some cases it's possible that you have assessed something, but in other cases it may be that you just haven't assessed it yet, and it needs to get on the list of assessment from a planning perspective. And Dr. Powell will speak to, again, her experience with this process. These are designed to just show you how our colleagues are applying, have already started applying this template to reviewing their curriculum. Interestingly, when I started working with Professor Felix Lorenzo, he shared with me that he has his own curriculum mapping template, and this is his template. His template, and he'll speak to this a little bit later on, his template really is focused on every granular standard from the state, and he quantifies them and identifies where they are being addressed in the curriculum. And I wanted to share this with you because there's some of you who might feel like I need to do it at this level as well. And I want to be able to make sure that everything is checked off somewhere, somehow, from a representation perspective. Professor Lorenzo agrees that we should probably start at that high level first and then work our way down to this level. But certainly he has a template, and here's how, one of the things, actually before I move on, here is just showing how you can already tell a key course in this program because of just how many times that outcome is being addressed across various domains of types of knowledge. So this again is a course level example. I wanted to put it in here, and I'm thankful for him sharing it with me because I think it does help to have a way to capture all of this information as well for those of you that would like to do it this way as well. So here's how we have translated his program. I think I put in, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't change the header, but I will say that this is the building construction program. And notice here that in the yellow highlighted space, all of his courses are just core courses. They're not necessarily categorized per se. They're just listed as core, and they're listed in the sequence of the program map. And I wanted to show you all these different examples because you might be thinking about how you want to approach this for yourself, for your program. And so that you again see that there's aside from the principles I shared with you earlier in the presentation, you know, there's not necessarily rules per se on some of these things that you can represent it in a way that makes sense for you. Another thing I want to point out is that Professor Lorenzo already built into his program a focus on workplace skills. Even though we're mapping it, I think this is depending on how your state standards look or what's important to your industry, it might be appropriate to incorporate and outcomes that reflect that. And he'll speak to some of this information as well when he shares. So with that, I would like to share with you, I would like to open up, first of all, before I move on to our guest speakers, any questions about what I've shown you in terms of the curriculum map? And I'm checking the chat. You know, I see that Dr. Arenas posted a question about D2L, but then he says disregard. You know, I will say this, in talking to Professor Lorenzo as well, this is something that at some point would be wonderful if it's done systematically through some type of database. At the moment, we don't have that functionality per se to do the mapping the way we're proposing it right now. Even our school system does capture what we've assessed and provide somewhat of an assessment map, but that's what it is, an assessment map, not necessarily a curriculum map. So at some point it might be good for us to explore a way not only to do this systematically through a database, but for the integrations of the data to be such that there's not a lot of manual input to create it. Because again, what Renee was mentioning on the front end is that there is that work involved. But what I can say is that Louise has been working on creating templates for each of your programs. And so our office is doing some of that work of listing out your courses according to your program map, putting in your IE assessment outcomes so that it just becomes a matter of, and the state standards, so that it becomes a matter of you mapping, doing the work of identifying where the learning is being introduced, reinforced, and mastered. And then we can work with you as well to really refine your finalized version of the map so that then you can take it to the rest of your colleagues and your faculty to have that conversation about what else needs to be addressed here that we didn't capture, because we wanted to do some kind of front end work with it and then engage the broader groups, because then it's your meetings and your conversation doesn't become about compiling, it becomes about refining. And so hopefully through that, we're able to expedite the process so it's not bogging down everyone, because again, every individual person that does the map might have a different idea about where they think the learning is happening. So if a lead faculty or a program manager takes on this work of starting the process, then when they have that broader conversation, then they'll say, okay, I understand why faculty who teach this particular course feels that it also supports some other learning outcome or things of that nature, and so on. So again, it's going to be an iterative process, if you may, as you're going through this, starting with what we already have, so that we're building on the foundations that have already been established and not starting from square one. With that, let me turn the floor over to Dr. Nora Powell, and then I'm not sure if Professor Lorenzo is already here. So let me see.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay, perfect. So you guys can just go back to back. I'm going to stop sharing so that they can see your wonderful faces. And from there, let me see if there's a way to spotlight. Okay, so there you go. So Dr. Powell, take it away.
So to me, this was a really interesting process. And it was a great thing to work with Kandeice on this. As an academic institution, the curriculum is our backbone, right? And having a current up-to-date curriculum helps to ensure students are getting the knowledge and skills they need to, get gainful employment and eventually a living wage. So for us, the curriculum mapping was a process of indexing the curriculum to identify gaps, redundancies, misalignments, to improve the overall coherence of our course of study and, in essence, the overall effectiveness. Using the map helped us to ensure we're meeting both state and national accreditation. So one of the pieces as a dean, as a previous AD, that's real interesting to me is that, I would go to my faculty and say, hey, you've got to do a 5-year course review. These are the courses that are up for review. You need to do this. And I would say 90 to 95% of the time, it would go through curriculum if no changes, no changes, no changes, no changes. And so in one of my programs that came up for accreditation review, you have to do a comprehensive evaluation of the curriculum when you go through curricular review. They do a site visit and determine if you're in alignment. And in doing so, it was realized that the learning outcomes were not even remotely close to alignment with either the state or the national standards, yet the courses had gone through 5-year course review. And I don't say that as a criticism of a faculty. I say that as a fact that we don't have a process for even acknowledging or recommending what should happen during a 5-year course review. Well, basically just say, hey, do this, they look at it and boom, it's done. So, I mean, it brings to light the fact that, we have our own gaps in how we process and do things. So for us, the process was going through all the domains of the accrediting body and the state, say, what are the learning outcomes that are required? Can I share, Kandeice?
I will make that possible right now, if I haven't already.
You just have to hit share and it will let us share.
Yeah, 1 second.
I just want to show what my map looked like because you showed Professor Lorenzo's, and I want to show you what this looked like. It meant dissecting the entire program and figuring out every single outcome and where it was taught in where it was taught in the program. Huh?
You should be able to share now.
I can. Let's see. Yep, I can. So hopefully you can see it. Let me know. Can you see that?
Yes, it's here. I can see it. I can see it. It's tiny.
Oh, let me switch screens. Let me do it again.
Okay.
I can't even figure out how to get back out of that now. Oh, here, stop share. Hold on a minute. Let me just move it into a different place. It's a different screen. Where the heck did this go now? There we go. All right, let me try that again.
It is definitely tricky with sharing.
Yeah, it should be okay now, though. I think it was just screens on. Can you see it now?
Yes.
So you can see these were the domains put forth by the accrediting body. These were the overarching outcomes, and then every single one of these line items had to be found and where it was in every book. And then they assigned a Bloom's level to it. So you knew what level you had to teach it to and what assessments had to be tied to it. So it took us a long time to go through and do this for the entire program and put all the pieces together. But after we had done this, that's when we started working with Kandeice to develop the program map that she showed you, the curriculum mapping. And so it's a way of tracking and seeing and ensuring that you're actually teaching the content you're supposed to teach. I would say we were guilty of assuming that people were aligning the outcomes to what they should have been aligning them to. But I think that there's a knowledge gap to an extent, and there's a process gap. So if you can set this up and you can determine are you actually teaching learning outcomes? I don't know if anyone else on the line, in allied health science, we have an accrediting body for every single program. And so they tell us the very specific outcomes. And then the state has a different set. So we had to develop a very, very big crosswalk that crosswalked all of these outcomes. And that was basically our process. And we put it into the framework that Kandeice, and I think it came out really good, and it shows it's a great SACS tool, to be very honest. It's a little time consuming, and certainly to find every single learning outcome for every single one of those on that document was very time. It took weeks with 2 of us doing it. So I would venture to say that most people's programs would not have the same issues that we did. This was one of our toughest and one of the ones that was most out of alignment, let me say. And now it's completely in alignment. And that's the long and the short of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Powell. Can you also just briefly share how you shared your, I guess, your latest version of your map with your faculty, your colleagues, what conversations you're having at this point, if any?
Well, I mean, I think the conversation, it comes down to, are we really teaching what we're intended to teach? Are the students learning what they should be learning? Outcomes are a big thing for us to track. How many students are passing certifications? In I'd say 90% of the programs, we have between 90 and 100% pass rate on certifications. This program didn't, so that would have been a clue that, why aren't they passing? Well, they're not attaining and learning the outcomes and the knowledge and the skills that they should have been. So, it kind of all wraps around. And so we worked with all the faculty and discussed and showed and looked at this. And I believe the rest of the areas are in alignment, certainly based on the national certification examinations you have to take. They're very successful, we have very high success rates. So the other one that we looked at was EMS, and we have now made great gains in certification rates on EMS too. So I think that if other like on the gen ed side, the AA side might not have those certification exams where you can really see, hey, is what we're teaching viable? But we can see it directly, and it should have been a clue before it was.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Powell, for engaging in the process. Again, I consider you a design partner, and a lot of the other folks here who will engage with this at the level you have will help to inform a lot of what we do going forward as you have. So thank you so much for sharing and for really taking this process as seriously as you did. I know you just in talking to you throughout the process, you have felt very passionate about making sure your curriculum is effective, and that energy certainly comes over. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I would just say no one should assume that that their curriculum is okay. You should pull the standards, and you should ensure that, and for most people, pull the state standards and ensure that those outcomes are actually being taught. They update those state standards every so many years. So if you're not doing that, and looking at it, and you're just passing things through as a 5-year course review, then you also could have an issue. And I would certainly make a suggestion that the 5-year course review process should be reevaluated.
Okay, well, thank you again. I'm now going to turn the floor over to Professor Lorenzo, and let me find him and spotlight him.
Okay, so here I am. I don't have a camera, but I would like to share a document, if I may. So
yes, please go ahead.
All right, so let me go ahead and do that. Okay, is that large and clear on the screen? Do I need to make that? Okay, very good. So just to latch on to what's already been said and to expand a little bit on it, as we progress in understanding our programs more fully, the tools that are being discussed today, I think, are helpful in different ways. I started off by just making sure that the program complied with the state frameworks. So I had to go into the granular level and identify in which course we were or were not teaching the required material, and then using that information to then inform the curriculum committee proposals that I would put forward. The way I set it up was very different from what is being presented today. And now Kandeice is actually helping understand that you can look at the information from many different points of view. I was looking at it strictly from making sure I met the state standards. But if we look at the samples that were provided today, we can go ahead and see that you can reframe the information to show when was the last time through the IE process that you went ahead and looked at how well a course or a particular bit of learning was performed. And so now you're able to keep tabs on how well are you reviewing your own program over time. And so you can take the information and you can present it in the ways that have been shown today so as to give emphasis to a particular aspect of your program. And in so doing, now you can display the information for different tasks that you need to complete in the managing of that program. So I think that if you were to, for example, look at the granular level, so I can go here and I can go ahead and highlight. It says number 1.01 was understand federal and state laws applicable to the construction industry. So there are moments where that's information that's important, but I don't need to see it all the time. And so as we generate these charts, it's important not to have information overload. So you have the information you need for the task that you're going to engage in. So you have what you need, but not excess information. And then being able to go back, and if you want more detail, it's there, you can go find it. But you can look at the big picture at will. And that's the essence of it. I think that necessity is what leads us to create all sorts of documents, charts, tools, and other devices of our own creation to solve the daily problems of managing a program. But over time, and I think this is where Kandeice's work is really standing out to me, is in the fact that she's trying to help us to standardize things a bit, if you will, understanding fully well that each program is its own world, but at the same time helping us understand what are the areas of interest. And so being able to organize the information in a way that is useful to us, that helps us to create a better program, in the end is something that we could all benefit from.
Thank you so much for sharing, Professor Lorenzo. And I remember from a few years ago in an IE training session, you spoke up about making sure that we are assessing our programs, and I in a very thorough way. And I knew that you stood out to me because you are championing these ideas that are so important among a lot of other people on this call. I don't want anyone else to feel that I don't think you're good champions as well. It's just some of the conversations we've had and maybe timing and opportunity. But Professor Lorenzo, I really loved what he was doing with his curriculum map, and I wanted to share it with you all because this is an example of, again, making sure that there's coverage of the learning outcomes, the standards that are being met, and to again, he was very gracious about sharing the information and then also working to translate that information into the current version of the map. And again, some opportunities that he also is identifying through that process. So thank you for sharing, Professor Lorenzo, and for also just the great work that you're doing in terms of making sure that the curriculum is effective. I do have one question for you. I would say for people that are about to engage in this process, given that you've been doing this work for some time now, curriculum mapping, are there any particular points of advice or lessons learned that you would share with your colleagues?
Definitely. Because of the nature of the state framework, I'm regularly meeting with them, via Zoom meetings and the like. And so there's always changes. I propose changes, other institutions propose them, we vote on them, we get them, and then we go ahead and go back home, if you will, and begin to implement them. And that is absolutely essential to keeping the programs up to date, because at that point, we can see what the trends are within the other institutions, what they're thinking about, what they're planning, what challenges they have encountered in the teaching of their particular subjects. And so this helps us to not just develop the program on our own, but to be able to take into account what's going on statewide. So for example, in my program, we have an associate's in science degree and we have a certificate. The way the state frameworks are organized for the building construction subject, the frameworks for the certificate and the associate don't necessarily use the same language. When they talk about similar topics, they don't number them the same either. These haven't been coordinated between each other. And so when I go ahead and try to prepare a document for alignment, I end up having to generate two. So the one that Kandeice showed you today was for the certificate. And then on the right-hand side, you were able to see AS degree equivalent. So I would have, a particular, on the granular detail, I would have a particular skill set that would be numbered one way in the certificate because of the state framework. And then what is its equivalent in the associate of science degree. So that's a higher level of complexity or detail that I had to deal with personally. And so each program is going to be different, but you have to coordinate between the related degrees. So depending on how many certificates you have incorporated into your associates, that is something that's going to have to be separately aligned so you can see how that fits together as well. So I would say then that is the absolute key to this. Understand what's going on in the educational environment for your particular area, participate in these state meetings, be a voice, propose what you think is best, and then use that information to help you keep your program up to date.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for sharing, Professor Lorenzo, and for the great advice that you have shared with your colleagues. And again, really being a champion of assessing the effectiveness of your curriculum. So with that, I am going to share my screen again. So Professor Lorenzo, if you can stop sharing on your end, I will share. But before actually I start again, are there any questions any of you have for Dr. Parra or Professor Lorenzo? Okay, very good. So I will go ahead and share. And let me see. I think I do this in reverse order every time. So you all should see my screen, my very busy screen. Okay, so you can see my screen again, hopefully. It took us a little bit further back. So what I'd like for you all to do, you guys know that in most of my sessions, I have this underwater basket weaving associates program. And what I want you to do is consider some of the factors that we talked about in curriculum mapping in terms of evaluating a curriculum map and see if you identify, so you can unmute yourself and you can just, share with everyone your thoughts or ideas. But looking at this particular program, you can see the program learning outcomes to the left, the state standards, the competency mapping, and then where learning is happening. Do you notice any gaps in this particular curriculum? You'll have a few minutes to review and then comment. So again, think about the progressive rigor, for example. Think about coverage, some of those things that we talked about in evaluating. So I see in the poll from Keisha King, T4, nothing is in T4 of Cornerstone. Okay, so excellent point. So if we're looking at this particular Cornerstone course, UBW 1003, that's offered in term 4, this course is not addressing any of these outcomes. So again, without knowing what these titles are, different things like that, and if that's just an oversight, or if it really, this course just is not factored into this curriculum, this at least helps us to start to understand that we have a course that's considered a cornerstone, or something that helps to support give the students additional foundations for learning this program, and for these 4 key outcomes, and specifically the state standards, this course doesn't address anything. So it begs the question, why is this part of the curriculum if it's not helping to meet any standards? So Dr. Kupelis is saying, for Cornerstone courses, shouldn't we have mastering at that level? Well, we're thinking about Cornerstone as just one next level up from foundation. So it's like, I'll use this example. In our business programs, for example, we have a lot of courses that are kind of shared across the business programs. For example, they might have like a macroeconomics course or something like that, that is just key to all business students. But it's more than just foundational knowledge about business. It's going into more depth. So that's what I mean by a cornerstone course. And so with that, they don't necessarily imply that students are mastered on specific concepts, although it is possible in that sense. So some of the competencies don't seem to match the PSLOs. That's fair enough. Yeah, so this is my sample program, but I probably overlooked that fact. But for the most part, what I would say is that you also want to make that assessment as you're looking at where you think students are learning particular competencies in terms of workplace competencies and general education competencies. I think it's important for us to, as we think about students gaining employability skills, soft skills, different things like that, it's really important to think about in our, when we're thinking about the content knowledge or the things we want students to master, knowledge, skills, and abilities, how are we ensuring that through their learning experiences, they're getting this opportunity to demonstrate these employability skills. If you notice on the basket weaving teamwork, that's already a PSLO that's addressing the fact that teamwork is an important aspect of this particular program. And so, you know, when you look at your particular program and your state standards, a lot of them say something like, students will demonstrate employability skills. So it's certainly important to address those institutional content. Okay, so Dr. Washpatillo is saying in UBW 1001, it shows that, okay, so right, so in a very early class, if we look at standard 1.0, that second class, UBW 1001, it's being introduced, then immediately reinforced and mastered, then later on it's reinforced and mastered again. So again, these are some of the things that when you do your mapping and you start to see that, wait a minute, a student is taking a mastery level course so early in the curriculum and they'd only been introduced to it one time before, these are important things to consider. And to make sure that, again, students are getting ample opportunities to be introduced, reinforced, and ultimately get to mastery of the concept. So great observation as well. Any other thoughts about the map? Anything else that you see that you think is there's an opportunity for improvement? So one of the things that, while you're giving this additional thought, I know we have to end the session shortly, is if you look at teamwork again, that standard to collaborate effectively with basket weaving team. Notice that it's not until the capstone where that's introduced, reinforced, and mastered. And that's very problematic because we would, oh, yes. Good. Dr. Washpati and I are on the same page about what we're going to cover. So yes, in the capstone, this is basically the first time a student has to do any sort of teamwork. And we're saying that just by virtue of how this map looks, that this particular program in large part requires that students walk away knowing how to work in a team to effectively demonstrate their work, because it's a team-based type of situation here. So if it's a program level type outcome like this, we would want to make sure that students are getting enough practice opportunities throughout the curriculum before they get to the capstone, because chances are the capstone is where they have some kind of project, some kind of portfolio that they are going to be working on. And so with that, they don't want to be, they've learned all the other concepts, right? They learn how to do their techniques, they learn about materials, they understand the safety, but now they have to do this collaboratively with other people. And so they may or may not do well, depending on their personalities, right? So, and I guess it can't be assumed that they will naturally assimilate to a team environment in demonstrating that they can be an effective professional team, if we're thinking about this as a true program. So with that, when if we're doing our map and we see that, okay, a lot of these courses don't have any type of assessments or instructional strategies that engages students in working in a team before they get to the capstone, then that's also something that we would want to address. So that's what this particular example is about, to really make sure that whether it's a capstone or some kind of final core course where students are working together, or regardless of the nature of it, it may not be around teamwork, that the students have had opportunities to practice this skill or this knowledge, this ability throughout the curriculum. So I see another one that should have all three. I'm not sure where, Joyce, you're speaking about, but with it, but
I was just saying it was bad grammar. In my haste, I used the wrong verb.
Oh, okay. I thought it was on the map. Oh, never mind.
No, you're fine.
The professor knew. But yes, but no, thank you for sharing that nonetheless, correct verb or not. It is point well taken, and we appreciate your insights. So with that, I want to thank you all for participating in this particular process, because I wanted you to see, again, go through the entire process of thinking about why we would want to do curriculum mapping, making sure that we have effective curriculum and that we outline it in a way that comprehensively addresses how learning is progressing throughout the program, that students are getting those opportunities to practice their skills along the way, and that at some point there is a sense of being able to synthesize and integrate their learning before they're graduating from their program. And again, ensuring that coverage, ensuring that things are being assessed. So again, what we're looking at here as an example is our detailed map, if I can call it that. It's not course level, but it's a detailed program map. And then we have a summary map that's also then going to show us when were these outcomes assessed, and to make sure that they're somewhat on a rotational schedule. And another thing about the summary map, if you recall, is that we also state the assessment method that's used. So that also gives us an opportunity to consider if the methods that we're using is appropriate for being able to tell that students are demonstrating the outcome. In other words, if say we said, okay, well, we assessed the course with a quiz, and it was done in a course where the outcome was being reinforced, then we have to consider, first of all, for IE assessment purposes, I'm going to ask you for the course where the students are mastering the concepts. But if you do your map and you realize that, wow, the way we've been assessing it is in an introductory course, or we're using an assessment instrument that is not really comprehensively addressing the standard, the PSLO, or it may be just a part of the standard. That's where we'll see opportunities as well with how we do our assessment. So thank you all again for doing an evaluation practice. I do want to say that as you go through this process, like I mentioned, it might feel like a heavy lift on the front end, but as you learn from your colleagues and saw some of the benefits of doing this, what you gain at the end and how it begins to help that build stronger coherence or collaboration among your faculty and your colleagues, you'll see that it's worth doing. And once you do it on the front end, it becomes maintenance, right? It's monitoring the changes, as Professor Lorenzo and Dr. Powell shared with the standards. The standards might change year to year. I will say that our office, namely Louise, thank you so much, does a good job of monitoring the state standards and making sure that they are inputted in our system, because through the IE cycle, you're also able to map your outcomes to the standards in that regard. But again, it's only specific to the standards that you're assessed, or the outcomes that you're assessing on an annual cycle basis. So that's why doing a comprehensive curriculum map like this puts it all in one place. So it's not limited to what you chose to assess in a given year. It's all there for you at one time for you to review and use for planning and communication. So I will also mention to you, I have resources like the NILOA curriculum mapping toolkit that I got a lot of this information from that I shared with you before. It's here on our website. It's been here for years. So you can skim through that as well, or just refer back to these slides that I'll send out to you all. But with that, are there any questions? Anything that you're curious about, or you want to get going with this right away? You want your map, your template, so that you can get started. Any questions? Thank you all for your comments in the chat as well. I'm glad you found this helpful. All right, well, hearing no questions, I think we are ending right about on time. So thank you all, and I look forward to working with you. Whether or not you have an AS program that you oversee or you're part of, or BAS programs, of course, the bachelor's programs, we have to work together to define your outcomes if they're not all necessarily defined, but we can certainly use what you've been doing so far and just combine all that information. I'm happy to work with you one-on-one. So just reach out and let me know you're ready to go. Otherwise, when those maps are ready, I'll share them with the relevant contacts to let them know that they can get started and to initiate that conversation. One thing I do want to say just in closing, that it's not a requirement, right? This is not a requirement. This is something that is a value add to you. It's a benefit to you to get this work done. And it's not required as part of the IE cycle, but it's something we want to support you in to make your lives easier in the long run. So everyone, thank you. I appreciate your input, your collaboration, your attention, and your feedback in the chat. And with that, we will end our session for today.
Thank you. Bye now.
Take care. Thank you for being here.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor Lorenzo. Take care.